Okay, here we go, part two. We already did the European theater. This is going to be the Pacific theater. So go ahead and scroll on down to Unit 6. I'm going to go to our ebook. This is going to be Chapter 14, Section 3. Section 2 was the European theater, and Section 3 is the Pacific theater. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and get onto that map like we did for the European theater. Now, the film clips did a great job of showing both these maps in much more detail, or as much detail, I should say. And so you already saw those film clips and took notes. This is just going into more detail for you. All right, so the Pacific Theater. Looking at this, hopefully it'll make sense when I'm all done. So we have this line here of demarcation. This is just representing how far Japan pushed and expanded. Okay, so Japan's located right here. And they're going to expand all the way out to there. So it's a lot of turf they took over. When before the war started in the 1930s, Japan really started taking over a lot of land. They invaded China. They're going to come down in through Indonesia, Malaysia, and take over a ton of land. And you can see how all this expanded out. They just got as far as Australia. I'll tell you why they didn't gain that. And you can see where Pearl Harbor is located. So they were still a fair amount away from us physically, but we did have islands out in here that we owned, Guam and so forth. We also were located in the Philippines. So again, why did Japan expand out? Well, they needed more land and resources, more oil mainly. They were an island nation and were desperately in need of oil. We actually, once they started attacking China and other countries, we cut off their oil supply. We were not trading with them anymore. And then they were really desperate. So you guys know, of course, they're going to attack us at Pearl Harbor. And from there, we're on defense for the first few months. But the thing that really does turn it around after Pearl Harbor is the Battle of Midway. And there was a movie out in the movie theaters. I'm filming this in 2020, Christmas 2019. A really good movie came out about Midway. So I encourage you guys to watch that. But we do win this battle, and that's going to be the turning point in the war. From then, we go on offense. And so if you look at these arrows all over the map here, one, you can see the map key. This little symbol represents battles all the way up through. And you see these arrows pointing to these battles and coming up through. This is representing the concept of island hopping. And again, the film clip notes obviously talked about this, and our goal was simply that we did not have a plane that could take off from our land, like obviously the West Coast of California or even Pearl Harbor, that could fly to Japan and bomb it. And so we had to get close enough to bomb it. And that's our concept here was island hopping. Keep hopping back as close as we could get to Japan and start taking off, build airstrips and have planes take off from there and bomb Japan direct. And we couldn't do that though until we got to these two battles here, Iwo Jima and Okinawa. We were close enough at that point we could bomb. And so all these other battles were simply us trying to get close enough to be able to do that. And we built airstrips on these islands and then attack the next point of contact until we got close enough to actually attack Japan itself. Okay, so that's the basic concept. Now, if you look at some other things here, Japan did get down almost. They attacked Australia, but we defeated them at the Battle of the Coral Sea. So they almost won over Australia. You can imagine how much more land that would have gained there. Again, as far as east, they didn't make it out any further than you see here. Again, fair distance away from our country on the west coast. They didn't make it pretty far west. They were all the way over to where India is located, but they attacked China, again, many other nations. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back up here to the reading portion. The main general of the Pacific is Douglas MacArthur. In the European theater, I said it was General Eisenhower. So you should know those two generals. But MacArthur is our top general in the Pacific, and again, it was Eisenhower in the European theater. The Coral Sea, I already said, that's the battle that saved Australia from Japanese invasion. Midway is the turning point of the war. Again, the movie does a great job. Nimitz in the movies, the guy who plays him does a great job portraying him. Today we have an aircraft carrier called the Nimitz, and that's obviously named after him. Again, the battle of Midway. Get down further here. So again, we're on the offensive. That's the turning point. The Japanese last point, kind of like in Europe, you had the Battle of the Bulge for the Nazis. That was kind of like their last attempt to kind of push us back. And for the Japanese, they're going to call it, it's not a battle per se, it's a thing called a kamikaze. It's Japanese suicide pilots. They would dive bomb their planes into our ships out in the Pacific. It was very effective. You can see the results here. And that was just really their last attempt to try to beat us. They knew they were pretty much going to lose the war. That was their last attempt. As we get back to the two main islands of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, very famous flag raising. This is the poster in my room on the podium and on the wall. I'm sure you guys remember it. And there's a huge statue in Washington, D.C. of it, and Marine Corps bases nationwide usually have a statue up front like this. Get Iwo and Okinawa, the two, they were actually Japanese territory. They were not conquered. So the Japanese really fought very hard for them. And we lost thousands of Marines taking these two islands. Of course, the end of the war in the Pacific is the atomic bomb. We had the Manhattan Project, a code name to secretly build it, and Oppenheimer was our chief scientist behind that. There's the famous mushroom cloud from the atomic bomb. Of course, we drop it on Hiroshima and Nagasaki 3 days apart, August 6th, August 9th. We actually developed a new bomber, the B-29. We had the B-24 before that, and 25. The 29 was developed specifically to drop the bomb because it was big enough to handle it. And of course, Japan surrenders promptly after the dropping of those bombs. Okay. So that's pretty much it. So that's the Pacific Theater, and I hope that clarifies some things for you. And we'll see you guys later.